Hello, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Lucy.
Welcome to another Cameo episode. These very short episodes will be slotted in between the other ones and will cover people who made a fleeting yet tantalizing appearance in other episodes. We don't always have a lot of information about them, so they can't have a full episode of their own, but they are too interesting to abandon completely, and they fill in the gaps and enable us to create as full a picture of the era as we can. And today...
Thomas Norton.
Thomas Norton.
Yes. And this is another Wee Small Hours listening revelation.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what I was listening to now, but by my bed I got a sheet of paper and a felt pen, and I jot things down in the dark.
Okay.
Sometimes I can read it when I wake up. But I noticed in the morning that at some point in the night I had written Thomas Norton, alchemist. And I thought, well, I'll look him up.
Ooh.
I don't know what I was listening to. I don't have any recollection of writing it down. So, anyway.
And he is in our era?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's the only English alchemist of this period that we got much information about. Well, the only one I found, anyway. And we don't have a lot about him, which is why he's a cameo. He was from Bristol. And he lived from around 1433 to 1513 or 14. So he lived for quite a chunk of time.
Yeah, he did. He got through 5 kings.
He saw some changes.
Yes, yes, he did.
He was born, quote, "an dear a crosser in Thenda of Shears 3, unquote. So where 3 counties meet. So possibly in a place called Collerne on the border of Wiltshire, Somerset and Gloucestershire.
Okay.
And he was the son of a merchant. Both his grandfather and his father had been mayor of Bristol.
Oh.
Later, Thomas Norton accused the then mayor of Bristol of high treason for something to do with a legacy of when his father had held that post. I don't know what it was about, and fortunately for that mayor, nothing ever came of it, because you don't want to be accused of high treason.
No, that's a death sentence.
It is. Yeah, I went off Norton at that point. I thought, you don't do that.
No, not unless he actually did commit high treason.
Well, even then, keep quiet about it. It's not a nice way to go. Well, Norton wasn't a professional alchemist, in as much as there weren't any real professional alchemists.
There were charlatans.
Well, yeah. If he were to have to fill in his profession on a form, he'd have written Sheriff of Somerset or Collector of Customs and Subsidies in Bristol.
Oh, so he's an official.
Yeah. He has a hobby.
He has a hobby. He has a very strange
hobby. A man with a hobby. But he tells us that he studied under George Ripley, who was an alchemist I had heard of since I did a study course on the Ripley scroll.
That's it. Okay.
He has a website and he's on YouTube and he does courses. And there's a man called Adam McLean who is very, very interesting on alchemy. And he does the course on the Ripley scroll as well. I thought about doing a cameo episode on Ripley, but we don't have much biographical detail on him.
Although doing a special episode on what they were attempting in alchemy and the kind of things they got up to might be interesting.
I thought that, yeah. I mean, we can put him into that sort of episode. Yes. I found alchemy absolutely fascinating.
It really is.
Because to us, it seems very bizarre. And because it's so wrapped up in occultism and hidden codes and languages and things, it's deliberately made bizarre.
Yeah, all the things that technically are very against Christianity, that's what they were attempting. Yes. And they were okay to do it. Because many monarchs had their own alchemist.
Of course they did. That's the only way they thought they'd be able to get out of debt.
Yes. That is how gold plating was discovered. Was by an alchemist.
I should imagine a lot was discovered through alchemy because it was done in a scientific way. It's not weird. The logic is there.
Well, it's also strange.
It's just a pity it started with the wrong premise, that's all.
Yes.
There's so many of these medieval things. You think, oh, if only it started in a different place, you'd have got somewhere.
Yes.
Norton tells us that at the age of 28, he visited Ripley and begged to be taught the art of alchemy. And Ripley recognised his innate ability and his singleness of purpose and so he agreed to make him his, quote, heir unto this art, unquote.
His apprentice.
Yeah. And it took Norton only 40 days to learn all the secrets.
That's not very many secrets then. There is one secret. I'll tell you the second one on day 40 and we're done.
Yes. Yeah, the second one is don't get caught. But we have all this from Norton, so... And Tudor folk didn't consider humility to be much of an asset, did they?
No,
so
it was
what
the
he's
opposite.
basically saying is, I'm very clever.
Yes.
Thomas Norton wrote a book which was also seen to be the pivotal tract on alchemy of its day, and it was called The Ordinal of Alchemy.
Does it still exist?
I think it does. An ordinal was a list of the rites to be followed for the ordination of priests and bishops. So I'm not sure how contentious this use of a religious word to cover an alchemical work would have been. It was written around 1477. I think that's the same date as Morte d'Arthur, isn't it? 77? Rings a bell. And it was written in verse, as everything seemed to be, in English and Latin.
Oh.
And it's the alchemical how-to bits that were written in Latin, so as to hide it from the proles and riffraff.
Ah, I was hoping the whole thing would be in Latin, because sometimes English is difficult to learn or to understand at this time period, but Latin I've got.
Well, it's actually more significant that some of it's written in English than that some of it's written in Latin, because it's, you can see the increase in things written in the vernacular now.
Yes.
It's 3,102 lines long, and, I mean, it's meant to be a poem, so was it any good? Warton, in the History of English Poetry of 1871, describes Norton's work as, quote, totally devoid of every poetical elegance, unquote. So perhaps more of a factual work, I think.
The ocean's blue, and this is true. That's the first opening line.
Well, mind you, what's his name? Wordsworth, what was it? He was talking about a pond. I measured it from side to side. It was 3 feet long and 2 feet wide.
Yeah. It still rhymes. That's a poem.
It does. It's a poem, yeah. As with most books on alchemy, the ordinal is deliberately obscure. And for a while, it was not known who had written the book.
Well, yeah, you could be in trouble.
Yes, but also, they loved a secret, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Riddles, secrets, things, puzzles to figure out before they could get...
Rebuses.
Yeah.
Yes. Visual puns on their coat of arms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can happily hold with that because I love cryptic crosswords. So. One of the two people who were interested enough to try and work it out was Elias Ashmole. And he created the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. And he also collected the works of John Dee.
Oh.
Yeah, and he found them. I'm dredging this up from all my reading about John Dee. When I started this podcast, I was writing a book about John Dee, but I haven't written a word since.
It takes a lot of time, this podcast.
It does. Yeah, it was found because a maid, I think she'd been wrapping crockery up in it.
In it? Oh,
lighting the fires with it. And apparently Ashmole sort of waded in and said, "Oh, you give that to me. You're not lighting fire with any more of his things.
If anything has writing on it, you don't burn it."
It all looked like gibberish.
She actually burnt the decoding. there was a reference. This is what this means, and that's all gone.
Yes, that would be really handy with John Dee. Really handy. They worked it out. And they looked at a hidden message from the first lines of the first 7 chapters of the Ordinal. Because Norton had said, quote, "Changing of some one syllable may make this boka unprofitable," unquote. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it rhyme then. So it was felt that there had to be a message in there somewhere.
Yeah.
If only someone could work it out. And they discovered that the first word of the first chapter was to. The first word of the second chapter was mace, M-A-I-S, as in French for butt. The third was nor. The fourth was ton. The fifth was of. The sixth was breeze. The seventh was to. And put it all together and you have to, maze, nor, ton, of, Breeze
Thomas
toe.
Norton.
Or Thomas Norton of Bristol.
Wow.
Or as the Bristolians would say, Bristow.
Bristow.
So it's easy when you know how.
Yeah. There's everything else is missing. There's stories all the way through it.
I should imagine there's probably a lot more to decipher in there. If he's doing that sort of thing, there's probably all sorts. And if people are interested, if you go over to YouTube and watch the videos of Alexander Waugh, W-A-G-H, because he's part of the Evelyn Waugh family, they're fascinating. And the lengths people went to hide things. He's particularly interested in the who wrote Shakespeare, Edward de Vere.
Yeah.
That saga that I'm sure we'll have to go into, well, in many decades to come. But yeah, very interesting. I recommend going to see his videos. Confusing. You might have to watch them several times.
Okay.
They are good.
Interesting.
Norton's book came with illustrations which are invaluable for understanding what sort of apparatus was used by the alchemist. Because we can see furnaces, glass cucurbits, the glass vessel that will be heated over a flame, an alembic, which is a still consisting of two glass vessels joined by a tube, and the first illustration of a balance isolated in a glass case so that accurate measurements could be made. And also there's a glass vessel in the shape of a pelican, because the pelican pecking its chest so that its fledglings can drink their mother's blood was a major image in alchemy.
Yeah,
and
Bishop Fox.
And that's why the glass vessel with the top bit coming down, like the head of a pelican pecking her chest, is called a pelican. It's also a symbol of the selfless search for purification, because the pelican, selfless creature giving its own blood to its children.
Yeah, which it doesn't do.
No, I don't know where that myth came from.
I don't know.
And the alchemist was meant to approach their work in the same way, in the same selfless manner.
How many of them died then? With things exploding in their faces.
I must imagine quite a few.
Yeah, especially when they got gunpowder.
And fumes. And fumes of things.
Fumes. Yeah.
Dangerous job. And as we were saying, monarchs were into it because, there's a painting of Elizabeth I called the Pelican Portrait, showing her interest in alchemy. Yeah.
Yes.
There's also an illustration of Norton receiving a text from a seated man with the text, "Accept the gift of God under the sacred seal, and I will keep the secrets of holy alchemy secretly."
That's a lot of secrets.
Yeah, they do like a secret. So alchemy is straight from God. So that's okay then. Nothing to worry about.
That's very interesting because the church didn't see it that way.
He's saying, I'm not a witch.
Warlock.
Yes. Can I make this very clear that I'm not a witch?
Yes. It is from God. God gave it to us. Do we know if any of the popes had alchemists?
Oh, gosh, I think I did come across... Was it Alexander?
I don't know.
I'm sure I've come across some mention of it. Well, if it's Alexander, I'll probably come across it again because we've chosen Lucretia Borgia as our next Patreon episode.
Yeah. Super excited about that one.
Tudoriferous Patreon. Release the beast in you.
The first few paragraphs of the book included the usual beachy niggling at other academics that book writers
really love to
go
do.
in for. They do. He's very scathing about those who have taken the alchemical ideas from the ancients and have sort of manipulated them to suit their own purposes. But I think that's better than this sort of slavish, if an ancient wrote it, you've got to follow it by the word.
Yeah, but why didn't they just do that with the humors? Like, come on, look into that one. Pick that one.
Yeah, the idea of just thinking, well, we can't do it. It's got to be someone who lived 1,000 years ago. Yeah. He also has a go at Geoffrey Chaucer.
Ooh.
In the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer included a story called The Canon Yeoman's Tale. I don't remember that one at all.
I don't either.
Now, apparently he was late, the Canon Yeoman, and sort of had to run to catch up with them. But it's a satire on alchemy. And Norton took a dim view of his life's work being satirised, it seems.
I think I would be too. Hey, hey, I'm legitimate.
Well, it seems that Chaucer had a real alchemist in mind, since in 1374 a chaplain called William de Brumley confessed to making counterfeit gold coins after being taught how to do it by a canon at King's Chapel, Windsor. You think, well, is that what canons at King's Chapel, Windsor are meant to be teaching?
Yeah, why?
Chaucer did a fair amount of research to write the story, leading to his being thought of as an alchemist himself. It's one of these things, we talked about this with Machiavelli. Was this really meant to be serious, or was it a satire? Well, this one was a satire, but people didn't realise.
Oh.
Yeah. So, it must be so frustrating when that happens.
Come on, guys, this is a joke. Happens to me all the
just a
time.
joke. Norton claimed to have invented a new type of furnace, and he stressed the importance of heating the elements to just the right temperature for just the right length of time. And by elements here, of course we mean water, earth, air, and fire.
Not quicklime,
as we know it. Yeah. Quote, "A perfect meister ye may him trow, which knoweth his heat, high and low, nothing may let hinder more your desires than ignorance of heat, of your fires," unquote. You can see why they thought it was rather clonking poetry, I think,
yes.
Can't you? So if you don't understand heat, you're doomed to fail. And his description of his furnace contains the first mention of dampers to regulate the temperature.
Oh.
And it's said to be able to reach 60 temperatures simultaneously.
What?
By which I guess it means that there were different chambers, each being dampened to a different extent.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to visualise this to start with, and I thought it's got to be
They
different
put ice
chambers.
cubes on the surrounding area of one.
So that seemed to be his big thing, is furnaces and working out the heat, which is very, very important. The purpose of the alchemist was to create the philosopher's stone and the quintessence, which is the elixir of life.
Yes.
And we know that Norton did create both of these things. And we know it because he told us so in the Ordinance of Alchemy.
Well, then why isn't he still alive?
Well, we know that too, because he said he twice created the elixir of life.
Oh.
Only for it to be stolen away from him by the greed of others.
Oh.
First by his manservant, and the second time by a merchant's wife from Bristol. So, I mean, this is quite annoying, because if they hadn't been so greedy, we could all be living forever.
Wow.
Yeah. Didn't think it through, did they?
And he did not name them, obviously.
No, they're just a merchant's wife. Yeah, don't go looking for her.
Shh.
What did his family think about him spending his time on alchemy? Well, we might be able to surmise what his father thought from the fact that in 1458, Thomas's father wrote him out of the will. And he gave the lot to his younger brother.
You idiot.
Yes. Well, later his father seems to have had second thoughts, and we know this because the younger brother was contesting the father's attempt to change the will back into Thomas's benefit. And the reason for this could have been anything, really. I mean, maybe they'd had an argument that they later patched up. Maybe Thomas was a dissipated young man who sort of pulled himself together in his 30s. But some think it was because Thomas was spending his youth conducting alchemical experiments, which his father saw as a complete waste of time and money and possibly a little bit dangerous.
Yes, all three.
Yeah. But then he buckled under once he was in his 30s and gave it up a bit. But
Prodigal son returns.
it seems to me to be a bit of a leap of faith, that. So he's been cut out of the will, therefore his father didn't like him doing alchemy. A bit of a jump.
Yeah.
In 1461, Thomas became an esquire of the body of Edward IV and Constable of Gloucester Castle. But it's not known whether he got these jobs despite wasting his time on alchemy or because of it. Because King Edward was very keen on alchemy himself.
They all were.
They were, yeah. And yes, they all employed these people thinking, it's great. All they've got to do is find us a countless amount of gold, and we have no more worries.
And we'll have lots of gold.
Yes, it must have seemed so easy. Norton was rewarded for his efforts, I'm not quite sure whether it's general efforts or alchemical efforts, with land confiscated from Edward's enemies when Edward came back to the throne in 1471, following his exile in Burgundy. The National Dictionary of Biography says that Edward shared his troubles with Norton while he was in exile, which implies that Norton was in Burgundy too.
Everybody goes to Burgundy.
Yes, they do. Norton died in 1513 or 14. One source said that he died having ruined himself financially and also anyone else who had trusted him.
Oh.
But this source also said that he died in 1477, so I'm not sure how much credence we can give to that. In the Ordinal, Norton writes, quote, "With due proof and with discreet essay, wise men may learn new things every day," unquote. Which is not a bad sentiment to end on.
No.
Yeah.
I like that.
Good for him.
Yeah.
It does sound like the sort of thing you might put on a fridge magnet. But
yes. Yeah. Actually, that's a good idea. Make that my hope and love sign. Stick it up at work and watch everybody go, what does that say?
Yes, it's with due proof, and with discreet essay. Yeah, so that's Thomas Norton. If we don't know a lot about his life, we know he wrote the book.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's more than we know about most people.
Yes, it is.
And we know that he discovered the elixir of life twice.
Yeah, twice.
How many people can say that?
And why do you need to discover it twice if you discovered it once?
Because people were greedy. He obviously didn't write down the recipe. Like MacArthur Park. Never had that recipe again. What was that song about? Okay.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
I like that one.